Talk about Deebo Samuel. I mean, he did the same thing. He scrubbed the 49ers from his social media. He's skipping the on-field program this spring as he angles for a new 49ers deal. I mean, here's a team with the Niners. I mean, George Kittle and Fred Warner, they took a different approach the past 2 years with the Niners. They quietly did their work, and they got their deals. So, Brady, how is Deebo's situation different?
I don't really see it much different. I mean, I think the harder thing for Deebo Samuel is to really make a case as to what his value is to the San Francisco 49ers. And don't get me wrong, he had an incredible year last year, but some of that was out of necessity because of the injuries to George Kittle, for example, and some of the other playmakers. There's a reason why he was in the backfield, as you'll see right there, playing running back. There was a lack of depth there. You know, once they're back healthy, there'll be more running back by committee, or you'll have more of a bell cow back. And I just don't foresee him racking up the amount of yards and getting the amount of attention that he got last season, where he's over 1,400 yards receiving. It was a phenomenal year, don't get me wrong, but if you look at the prior 2 years, it's been George Kittle leading this team in receiving. He's their number one target. He's really what they base everything off of. So I think the biggest question mark is, if you're San Francisco, are you really willing to open up your bank account to pay Deebo Samuel a ton of money with a concern that will he be a one-hit wonder, at least with the production we saw a season ago? He's not the biggest wide receiver. He's not the fastest wide receiver. I think all those things are concerns for you when you really look at how he stacks up to the rest of the wide receivers out there. And this is no discredit to him at all. He's a tremendous player. But can he stack together seasons like we've seen, like last year? We haven't seen it so far early on in his career. We've seen that from A.J. Brown. We've seen that from a number of other wide receivers who's wanted to renegotiate their deal. So that's the biggest question. Is like all the San Francisco 49ers willing to sign him to that long-term contract, not necessarily knowing what to expect and if he can replicate what he did a year ago.
Those are great points, Brady, and actually things I haven't thought about. I was actually looking back at what I had written about Deebo coming into his draft year at the Senior Bowl, and the knock against him was that, is he too small? Is he fast enough? And he had an injury history coming out of South Carolina. The injuries have been less of a concern here, but the other concerns you point out, I feel like he has a lot of leverage, more leverage perhaps than most wide receivers in this spot. I only say that because the other guys on that roster right now at wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk, who was in the doghouse for points of last season, Juwan Jennings, who's basically a split between a wide receiver and tight end. He's not going to beat you in a foot race if you're a defensive back. And then they have Ray McLeod, who they just signed from the Steelers. Again, he's a return guy who can offer something as a number 3 or number 4. So there is some leverage there. And unlike, at least a little bit for me, unlike the running back situation in the Kyle Shanahan system where you can put guys in there and they can have success, I guess Deebo Samuel is a perfect example. Wide receivers seems to require a little more in terms of responsibility. Again, at the end of the day, I don't know if it makes much difference. I don't know if all these guys that are angry and taking their team's name off social media think they're going to get $20 million a year. They probably all won't. Deebo was a second-round pick, and I think there are reasons for that. At the end of the day, I think he has a little more leverage, perhaps than some of the other players we're going to talk about. But it's up to the 49ers ultimately to decide, is it worth it? One other advantage also I would mention, Jeremy, is that Trey Lance is in year one of being a starter, and maybe you want to have that security blanket of Deebo Samuel, and you want him to be happy. But again, we'll see how this plays out in the coming weeks and months.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.